Today's podcast episode is a truly special episode. I invited on one of my former students, Paraic, an Irish actor who is incredibly talented, and I picked his brains about what acting really is, what he thought it was, what he discovered it is, where overthinking plays a part in acting, a brand new way of prepping and connecting to characters, the moment he found the essence of the character inside of the War Project module, which he'd never ever experienced before in previous productions or classes, and how the War Project changed his acting forever and what other opportunities this led to for his acting career. At the end of this chat with him, I was super inspired, super pumped, and grinning ear to ear. And I know that you're going to be as well, because he speaks so passionately about the craft and what it takes to become an actor. And also is very honest as well about the challenges with modules such as the War Project. He doesn't sugarcoat it. And I always think that's really important to hear both sides, not just the positive, but the things that are challenging. He speaks from the heart. I just can't wait for you to dive into it.
You are listening to Unstoppable Actors, the essential podcast for ambitious, unknown actors with me, Louise, the artistic director of Standby Method Acting Studio. And for the last 13 years, I've been taking unknown actors with blank CVs all the way to Netflix dramas, Amazon Prime films, TV soaps, and stage plays around the world. And every week I'll be talking with you and sharing how you can become a paid working unstoppable actor, because you 1000% can. An acting career is doable. Are you ready to dive into the episode? So, Paraic, I am so excited that you are here talking to our listeners all around the world about acting and your experience with us at Standby, and in particular the War Project module, which we've got coming up. But before we dive into all of that, I would love you to take us right back to the very beginning. And can you tell us how you first got hooked into acting, or how acting hooked you?
Well, I think acting hooked me initially when I was a kid, just watching television. And then I think I started impersonating what I would see on the television, whether that was actors, presenters, newsreaders. I kind of would put on a show for my family, and it'd be just off my own cuff. I had a very creative mind as a child, still do. But I think then my parents, or my mother in particular, saw that, I'd be good at performing arts, even though I preferred sport, which was a silly thing in a way, I suppose, because I was better at performing arts. But she saw that maybe I had something, or I should go down that route. And she put me into the Kerry School of Music. So first of all, I'm from a place called Tralee, County Kerry in Ireland. And they have a great school of music there. She do fantastic shows, I think, still up to this day. It's been going for 30, 40 years or more. And I got my first taste in there when I was maybe 4 or 5. And I did several plays. Sometimes we just part of the ensemble. When you're a child, I think that's where they put you in, where you're singing in the background. And around the same time as well, I played, I think it was at Old King Cole in Junior Infants. I was 4, December 1998, and I messed up my lines completely. And I remember being asked, did you see what happened? And I was meant to say, not me, ask my Fiddlers 3. I went, I saw nothing. And I got a roar of laughing from the crowd. I still have it on video somewhere. So that was my first taste into it. And I had School of Music, which I did for about 3 or 4 years. So that was my first taste into it, mainly theatre. It wasn't, I think, until maybe the age of 17, 18 is where I first kind of started acting on camera. Yeah. So there was a big, massive gap in between. There would have been bits and pieces here in school, in some drama classes and stuff like that. But I didn't, again, get right into it until I was nearly an adult.
I love that so much, because so many of us start off by doing impressions. I started doing that of, I don't know if you remember this character, but Phyllis on Coronation Street. She used to have a blue rims, and I just used to impersonate her all the time when I was little, but I never knew that that would be the start of me acting. So I love that.
I used to do Fred. Remember Fred, Ashley's father, Fred, in Coronation Street. Ashley. I used to be always doing those impressions. I'll
I
say that,
love
Oscar.
it.
I'll say that.
So,
It was
wow, so
brilliant.
you started really young then, like way before I did. I wasn't 14 until I got started. So, what was
Wow.
the moment then that you realized that this is not just a hobby, this is something that I know I need to pursue professionally? Can you remember that defining moment?
I think it was at the end of my university course. So I studied television, radio, and new media broadcasting. And that was mainly from behind the camera, behind the lens. And I was initially going, when I moved over here first, I was going to go into editing, when I went into post production. But straight away, I realized, I was like, ooh, I want to be the person on the screen more so than, behind the camera. And I had initially acted in our final year projects I didn't act in my own, so it was a different story. But for a couple of friends of mine in uni, I acted in their short film, and everyone went, "Oh, wow, that was very convincing." And he was a friend at the time, and he was in my course, Ryan. His uncle, Tim Landers, he's acting currently. He's been in films, adverts, you name it, across Ireland, and I think across the world. Um, it was when he said, "Oh, this guy can actually act." That's when I was like, "Do you think I have a chance in this?" And I think about 4 or 5 months later, he was running classes, and he was eventually starting up an agency. But I had moved away before he could get that up and running. But I did classes with him, and he kind of gave me the confidence to, go and pursue it when I was moving over here. And he helped me set myself up on Spotlight and everything. So it was quite well set by the time I got over here. So I had a couple of credits, although they were just, short films made by us, but they had an IMDb credit. So I think that gave you some sort of leverage going on to Spotlight before that. So he was the person, and those short films were there, and my interest in actual screen acting and not editing were my kind of gateway into it at the age of 22, 23, maybe.
Do you know what? There's a couple of things I love in that. Firstly, that somebody believed in you, because I think sometimes we just need somebody to give us that little push and go, "Yeah, you're
Yeah.
really convincing. There's actually some talent there," and that, for me at least, anyway, um, allows that dream to become a little bit more tangible. And then the second thing I
Mm.
love it, because believe it or not, so many people message me asking me if they're even in their teenage years, have I missed the boat? Am I starting too late? And I'm like, no, you can start at any age. So the fact that you started pursuing this at 22 is hopefully going to give those younger people some
Yeah.
inspiration to go, yeah, you can start at any age you want. So you moved to England then, is that right? From Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you came to England then, what were the real steps that you took then to start pursuing it professionally, acting that is?
Well, I looked what you needed to do because I joined a couple of platforms like Starno and stuff like that, and a lot of people would recommend extra work.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I started going to set, and I remember my very first one was a BBC series called. Well, there was one. The second one was Summer of Rockets, but it was a crime series. The name's not coming to my head now. But I had a couple of interactions with the main character. You just have a look, or you interacting while you're in the crowd, and that kind of gave me the confidence to go, okay, if I can get this close just on extra work, how much closer? Because I'd always had the intentions. I'm someone that I'll get somewhere, but I want to progress and progress and progress and progress.
Yeah.
So I was never going to be happy being an extra. Being an extra is a great job, and you learn so much on it.
Yeah.
But obviously, then you need to, either go to drama school or go to established schools like yourself or others to gain the necessary skills. Because when I did eventually go into the classes, I think my first was Meisner. Then I reached out to, or then I was introduced to yourself. But it was the whole, you have to listen, you have to react, you have to read through the script. It's not just being able to say the lines fancy, you
Yeah.
know? And I learned all these tips on extra work because I would see these fantastic actors, to be in their own worlds, kind of walking the halls. You could slightly interact with them, but I think it was frowned upon as an extra to interrupt them. So I would just leave them alone. I'd watch. And, I was just fascinated. And I'd look at them and go, right, what are they doing here? Staring off space, listening to music and reciting lines to themselves. As soon as a camera on them, they just turn into this different person. They're no longer themselves. They're the character. And that really kind of put my gears in turn to go, right, how do I gain these skills? And that's how I started. I think I did a couple of I joined Star now, and I did a couple of short films on that, and you were learning slowly. But I just knew I'd have to go and do more training or go and do some training to try and make it. So it was an amazing experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think sometimes we can look at acting and go, oh, it is just learning lines and then just maybe trying to feel an emotion. And there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there? So much more. And I love that you were
Yeah.
so inspired. And I actually love that you did extra work because I encourage it in the early days of your career. Because not only do you learn from the actors, you're learning technically what goes on a professional set. And I can imagine
Yeah.
it was, you hear all these words like first AD, second AD, and it's like, oh, what does all this
Yes.
mean? Do you
It's
feel
so
like
it's
that
so
helped you?
confusing. Yeah, absolutely. And then you would see like actors given markers and where to move, where not to go, because they go, right, the camera's here. You have to be in this general area, or else we'll miss the shot. It's just so much goes on, and you have to remember so much. But I think I'd like to not discourage anyone, but once you start getting used to it and being on set more and more and more, it becomes second nature,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. But it's a really good foundation for those early days. So you mentioned
Absolutely.
you started off with some Meisner classes then, and that you started learning that. And I love Meisner. I think Meisner is
Yeah.
incredible. So how did you actually come across Standby Method Acting Studio, and what made you think, oh, this is a little bit different from everything else out there?
So I had met former student of yours, Ben Sura, fantastic actor himself, still plying his trade and doing really well. He had spotted, I think, one of your was it day workshops. You had an online course, but during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So this was a great time to jump onto the online courses. And he had said, look, there's this 1 day course. Would you like to join it with me? I said, yeah, absolutely. And I had got a taste, as I said, of Meisner, where you're reacting. So I was like, I'd always admired method. I'd read into method so many times. So I was like, I really want to get on this because I think this was the best, I think, course for me to get into acting because I like to be fully become the person.
Hmm.
I need to go down every avenue, study every avenue. So that's how I got introduced. And I was hooked on it from the
Oh,
word go. Oh yeah, absolutely hooked on it. You gave a great introduction to it. You opened up my mind to, okay, if you want to become an actor, Paraic, there's a lot to it.
hmm.
You can't just half it. You have to go full into it. There's a lot of studying. You have to become the person. You have to know the backstory, all this sort of stuff. It just really opened my eyes that it wasn't just reading out lines fancy, which you
Yeah.
think when you first introduced to it.
Absolutely. You don't realize how much goes into it. And the foundational skills you have to drill into yourself as well, like the sense memory, the concentration, the relaxation.
Yeah.
And Ben is doing absolutely incredible. And I'm so proud of him. And he messages me every now and then to tell me what he's up to. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yay.
he's great. He's a great motivator as well.
Yeah, he really
Absolutely.
is. So
Yeah.
before we get into the war project specifically, then, what, just like as an overview, what do you feel like the training at Standby gave you that perhaps you didn't get somewhere else then? Like you've mentioned things like backstories and those kind of things.
Well, I think Standby through the brilliant Actors Journal, which I'd never come across that ever before, this detailed booklet that literally takes you through every facet of a script, of a character development, every single detail. I would never think of, there's one in there like, what does the playwright say about you? What do you say about others? What do I say about myself? What do others say about me? Just those simple questions really changed my way of reading and analyzing a script. You can never read it once. You have to, because every time you read it, there's a new detail, and you could read
Hmm.
50, 60 to 100 times. Um, that's really, I thought that was the method for me because there was just so much detail that was necessary and you couldn't leave out. But just the simple things as well of you'd ask the questions in that booklet as well of what can you see around me? What can you hear? Imagining a scenario. It all really helps when you're trying to become the character because it could be a different time period to what you're living in. It could be a different country. It could be a entirely different person. So I think when you really fully understand the character, then you can start to act or become that person with the utmost authenticity.
Yeah,
Eh, You know, it's
absolutely.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
but,
so for anyone who doesn't know what the Actors Journal is, can you give like a little brief overview of what it is in your experience?
I think it's an essential guide to preparing yourself for a play, for a film, for any sort of project you're doing within this creative sphere, because it preps it not only gives you every single ounce of information that you need to focus on, but it breaks it down very in a very easy and understanding way. Um, it breaks down stage direction when it asks what the playwright says about you. Key information. Because I think we need to remember with every script, there is a writer, there's a director that have their own version of it. And I think if you're able to break down every single ounce of a script, you can become that person. And I think it creates, a lot better relationship with you and those who see the stories in their heads and you're trying to bring it to life.
Yeah.
So I think it's an essential booklet that helps you become the best character you can be in terms of that. Just there's everything in it from, your research. There's one particular bit I liked in it that you go out on a day and you're the character.
Yeah, that's my favorite as well.
That's my favorite, and I did it for I did it intensely for the project we're going to be talking about in a moment for Alan Turing. I just became this different person. They went into the shop speaking a completely different accent, completely different stance. Just that book alone just made me think about acting in a completely different sense. So I think it really sets up the person for success. I think it's made everything so much better and a lot easier for me in my work so far. And I think it has helped me land a couple of roles and ace auditions and ace workshops I've done and everything like that. And I think trainers will admire going, "Wow, you put in a lot of effort into this." And you know what it allows you to do as well? It allows you to make firm and concrete choices. And I think I think coaches, I think directors, I think people that are analysing auditions when you go into the room, if they see that you can make a clear-cut choice, I think that's half the battle. Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think for those people who are like, okay, that it's making a bit more sense now that it's a booklet that takes you through the character building process and leaves no stone unturned. I just want to make it clear that you get this free in the module and you get to keep it for life. And I believe before we started recording, you said have you used it for auditions and films and stuff that you've done after the modules?
Yeah, I've used it for I've done workshops on the side. I've used it for that. I've used it for films I've used it for anything, really, even adverts. Even if I'm preparing for an advert, I'll use it. The good thing is it is extensive, but after using it for so long, you know what bits to pick out.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't have a lot of time. If you had a couple of months to plan for a role, well, then you can use every single page.
Yeah.
But it's built in a way that you can use certain amount of pages and you can be fully prepped for a role.
Yeah.
So it is just a really easy guide, and I use it for everything. I started using it 6 years ago when I first did a module with you, and I'm still using it to this day, and I think it's timeless. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I know you can't see me on the podcast, guys, but I've got the biggest smile on my face.
It's been a savior for me a couple of times, so I will always champion it. Absolutely.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear. Well, let's move on to the War project then. So can you paint a picture in our listeners' minds of what the War project actually is for someone who's never heard of it? So what is it and what are you doing each week?
Well, for me, so it was based on World War II, and I was given the role of Alan Turing. So back at that time, there was no video recordings of him, of his voice. I was literally working off secondhand information. So every week, you were building upon this character, building upon in scenarios every week, and it's true to World War II. So no information that's being thrown at you is made up. It's factual. So you're bringing this role to life each week. You're getting more and more information until I think you build it up to a final scene at the end, and you come to the conclusion at the end of the war. And you, with Alan Turing, he was cracking the Enigma code. So yeah, it's such a fascinating story. And this was a man who was a genius. And the fact that I was not a cracker of the Enigma code, I felt like I understand it a lot more towards the end. And it was incredible because this guy, he went through an absolutely horrendous time, but he's a national hero to the British and their war effort. And I think he was eventually given the credit, but during, a horrendous time for him.
Absolutely.
So what it is it's basically taking you into this world of the unknown. But each week you're given more and more information. You're doing your research. You have the Actors Journal to help you along, and towards the end of it, I felt I could fully and competently portray this character with
Yeah.
very little information.
Yeah, so the first 5 weeks we're doing improv, aren't we? You're doing improvisations with other characters. So the other actors in the class are facilitating people from his life. So you can create like memories, like core memories from his life. And then the final 5 weeks, every single week is a different year in the war, isn't it? But you don't know what's happening. All you're told is you're coming into Bletchley Park and you are breaking codes. And
you're reacting.
Yeah, you're reacting. There's no script. It's all improvised. And you were actually given codes to break, weren't you? How was that?
Yeah. Oh my God. But there was team effort. There was 4 of us in there. And in the last module, there was 2 of us. But my God, I think it really got your mind working. And as a result, I think it prepares you for a whole host of characters. I mean, you're going to have to think on your feet. You're going to have to not be afraid to make choices either. There's no problem with getting anything wrong. I got several codes wrong, but when I think I cracked 2 or 3 out of several. But when I did, it was pure joy. But the thing was, I was fully embraced in the character. That's the great thing with method acting. You forget yourself.
Yeah.
You become so engrossed in the story and so engrossed in the storyline and the task at hand. It allows you to block out the outside world and become fully invested in the story. And as a result, then you're going to create, authentic projects that will engross the audience.
Absolutely.
So this module really helped me with that. And it was the toughest module I've done.
Oh, really? Can you share why?
Oh, yeah. Because I just felt coming into it, just in the preparation, I felt just very uncomfortable because I wasn't mathematically minded like Alan Turing. I think we had different minds. He was more left-sided brain. I was more right-sided brain. So it was just very intimidating. But when I read between the lines and got to know him more, similarities there. He was just an ordinary person, well, just built or blessed with a fantastic mind. But you have to remember as well, you're always going to have some sort of similarities. You're going to overcome struggles. You're going to have high points. You're going to have low points. But at the end of the day, if you put enough effort into it and put enough work into it, you will achieve your goal. And I think that's what I did in this module. It was an extraordinary experience.
And what did you think then? Because each week there's some obstacles that are brought into the classes. Well, not the classes, the situation at Bletchley Park, which you have no idea about. I bring them in. There's things like the sirens going off because there's bombs. Like how was that? Playing such a big character such as Alan Turing, and you're breaking all these codes, which is challenging as it is, and you've had to learn that as part of your research, and then you've got all these other obstacles being brought in that I'm bringing to you but you're not aware of. How was that to deal with as an actor?
Absolutely overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming, because you had sirens going off. You also had, in the midst of it, a big speech from Winston Churchill, trying to rally you on as well. It's scary. It's scary, and it just really brought me into that world that I'd only ever, experienced through going to a museum or watching films. And I could just imagine how these brave people got through it. When you have your own personal lives to deal with, your own personal problems, but then the world is falling apart around you.
Yeah.
So it was overwhelming, but it was testing in a positive way, because you learned how to get through the noise and focus on the actual goal. And having the other characters there, the relationships between the characters. Once you break through those overwhelming tensions, then you can start to, okay, I have a task here to do. We need to break these codes or we're going to lose the war. You can start to focus on the clear objectives and mask out everything else.
Was there any point in the module where you fully felt like, do you know what, I'm not Paraic anymore, I am fully involved in Alan Turing?
Yes. It must have been 4 or 5 weeks into when we had established. So every week we would establish, maybe body language, voice. And it was when I could automatically just get into his stance, because I would look at his images. Again, as I said earlier, I had no video, just images to deal with. just I'd watch out how he'd be slightly slanted,
Yeah.
and just from his body language, even in pictures and descriptions of him, I'd watched several interviews of people who I'd met. He was quite a very soft-spoken man, kind of hunched over, very shy.
Hmm.
Um, but from adapting that and getting, I think, natural reactions from my co-actors, and getting feedback from yourself every week. So I practiced it out. As I said, I went out into the public and did all those things. I'd go and I'd speak with, really posh British accent. I thought that Alan Turing would speak with, and punched over. I got a lot of looks, but when you could convince people, I thought, when you could convince people that you were a completely different person, I then forgot about preparing. I could just automatically get into the character. I remember seeing an image. I think you took pictures of it, and I looked at it and went, "Oh my God, why am I slouched over like that?" You know, you do it without even thinking, so you wouldn't even remember it sometimes, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. So I
absolutely.
think it was 4 or 5 weeks into it, um, and for the rest of the module, I didn't even have to think about it. Um, so it was great that way. And that was the moment I realized when you come home after, it was always on the train home after, that I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I did that. What happened there? You know?
Oh, I love that.
Uh,
What do you think then was the toughest moment for you in those entire 10 weeks with this particular module? And what did that tough moment teach you?
the toughest moment, because he was quite loyal to his staff, from what I remember. He had a really close relationship with a female called. It was expressing the raw emotion. I think because he was withheld about his sexuality and everything for years, until it finally came out, and it ruined his life. It was bringing across that genuine emotion, because this man, had to hide so much, and focus on all his work, that I think he couldn't really express himself fully. So trying to bring that across in the module, while trying to be this brave person and crack the Enigma code and help the country that he loves so much, but then trying to express yourself, was the toughest part of the module.
Yeah.
Um, just getting across the real Alan Turing, not this man that turned up for work every day to crack the
Yeah.
Enigma code. But he was a fantastic mind, and as well, later on, I think he put his works into the first computer as well, and everything like that. It was incredible. But I don't think he was ever given the chance to fully be himself and to fully be happy in himself. So I felt I had to get that across at times, and
Yeah.
I felt not impossible, but I felt it was just very hard to bring across genuine emotions
Hmm.
outside of the task as Alan.
So what has that taught you then for your acting going forwards? Because obviously Alan is a very
Mm,
complex person. You've got this outer layer of him who is presenting to the world, and then you've got this
mm.
inner authentic Alan. And you've just said the challenge there. So what do you believe that's taught you going forwards with your acting and with characters?
Well, so it's taught me an figure of speech, but don't leave any stone unturned.
Hmm.
Whatever you discover, bring it to the forefront. You know, don't withhold anything. Let any raw emotions, let any raw ideas come to the surface. Because if you withhold any of those emotions that come forward even in the early stages in character development, or in the performance itself, you take away from the performance. It becomes unrealistic. So
Yeah.
basically, it's taught me not to overthink.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
taught me, yeah, it's taught me not to overthink, and not to fear um, how you might come across as the character. It's
Hmm.
obviously important to portray them true to life as possible. But at the end of the day, you are human. You have different understandings to everyone else that plays the same character. You'll play it a different way. Don't be afraid. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to bring those emotions forward, and don't be afraid to play it how you think you would like to play it, because you will offer something to the director or whoever in the future, something different to what they've seen before.
Yeah,
Absolutely, that's what
I
it's
think
all
that's so important because we are all unique, like you're saying, we've got our own
about. Yeah,
perspectives, and it's not trying to do a carbon copy of a character that someone else would do because then that's not your creation. I
exactly.
want to come back to the actor's journal, which you've spoken about quite a lot, and obviously that's really central to building a character. And in the actor's journal, we're building the character from the inside out. Can you give? I feel like we've kind of touched upon this, and you might want to expand upon it more, or we might find something different, but can
Mhm.
you give us a specific example of something you wrote in the actor's journal or something that you discovered in that journal about Alan that genuinely changed your performance of him?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. It's getting the cogs turning. So I think for me, um, I remember writing down a couple of times the similarities, and this is to do with both of us, but just how hard he was finding life in general and life. And this is all discovery from the text and everything like that. Just how hard he was finding it all.
Mhm.
Just how hard everything was in his overall life and cracking the code and all that. So I just remember that I remember writing down something along the lines of, this is more difficult than I could imagine.
Yeah.
This is more difficult than I thought it would be. Um, because as I said, he was battling so many things at once with sexuality, his, I think, lack of understanding of himself and lack of maybe happiness in life, apart from being this absolutely, brilliant war hero. There's just that difficulty in understanding himself and understanding where he was going in life afterwards and during. But those words came out like, this is rather, I think I wrote it like this. I did it in the accent. Well, this is more rather difficult than I expected. That was the
Oh,
key line in that.
I
That was the
love
key
that.
line in that. And I wrote that down in several places because it was something I discovered, but it was something that came to my own mind as well. But what allowed me to understand that was, again, and I go back to this several times, was the day I went out around my local area and played him, because I just felt odd and out of sorts walking around
Oh.
this world as this, this rather hunched over gentleman speaking quite politely. Uh, it stuck out like a sore thumb. And I feel Alan might have felt that way a lot of the time, even though back in the 1940s. So I think he died, unfortunately, in the 50s, 10 years after this whole war. So I could only imagine how that felt. I think I've answered your question. It was those words, but it was the walk around, it was the research, and it was drawn from the four questions of, what does the playwright say about me? What do I say about others? What do I say about myself? And what do others say about me? Those sections. I always go back to they're the most important
Yeah, I
sections.
feel
So that's what
like
it was for me.
you sound like you got to the essence of him that encapsulates everything in his life at that time. Um,
Mm.
was there within these 10 weeks of the war project, was there a breakthrough moment or a particular improvisation that you did with someone, or a week where you felt something click that you'd never felt as an actor before in previous scenes that you've done?
There was that moment where we all were in Bletchley Park, sitting down. We were under pressure, um, and it was there that I realized I was the leader. I had an army general beside me, and I think she was a fellow code breaker, but I was the one that was leading everything. I was going through. You had these sheets with different codes that would relate to different letters, and there was just those moments where we were all sitting around not knowing what to do. But Alan kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
Alan was like, right, we can't just sit here. Let's start breaking down the code. And it was from there, it all made sense. But again, it was at that moment where I forgot where I was, who I was. I became fully Alan Turing. Because these codes, you've been given a certain amount of time and they'll be just thrown at you. There's all these messages. As you said earlier, there's constant sound in these rooms. There's a speaker on at all times, and you're dealing with Either it could be planes flying over, it could be explosions, it could be the radio, and it could be the of the Morse code that's coming through,
Yeah.
or the sound of the machines as well ticking, because you had machines that would decipher these codes. It was there that I was able to just go, right, team, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to keep doing it like this. Let's break it down one from one. And it was at that moment where I realized that Alan was the leader. He
Yeah.
was the unsung hero. Although he was the small, stout man who was softly spoken, I realized there that none of this would be possible without him.
And have
And
you
that's
ever
what
had a breakthrough like that before in previous characters you've played, or was this something like quite a new experience for you?
I think I may have had a bit breakthroughs, but nothing to this extent where I fully felt like I understood this person's role
Mm-hmm.
and this person's, purpose to be there, and his
Yeah.
genius. And it was coming through me. I was never trained in this, but the fact that you're able to go read through the script and understand the character, you understood then of how he maybe thought and I think he would have been a leader. Absolutely. From the accounts I read, from the scripts, from the books I read, he was most definitely a leader, a quiet leader. He didn't
Yeah.
take all the recognition he should have, but he was the person that led the team. And it was from that moment that was the biggest breakthrough I had, because I didn't have to think about it after that anymore. I think that was about 5 weeks in, 4 or 5 weeks in.
And I want to make it clear to everyone listening, 5 weeks in is usually where all the breakthroughs start happening, because the science behind it takes 5 attempts at exercises to start becoming very competent at them. And a lot of actors can, because the exercises we do are challenging and they get you out of your comfort zone. A lot of actors can start thinking, oh, am I doing this right? Am I rubbish? What am I not getting? But it's week 5 that there's always massive breakthroughs for everyone. So that's really exciting to hear. So how do you now show up differently then as an actor in all the future things that you've done after the War Project, and future things you'll have coming up like auditions and productions? How do you show up differently as an actor now because of that module?
I think I show up a lot better prepared.
Yeah.
With a lot better understanding of the project as well, because this module and all the assets that I attained during it, it allows you to, fully understand the script, fully understand the character, and immerse yourself completely in it. And you can do it within little time. As I said, you can take little assets, but I show up, as the character. I'm able to go into audition or go into my workshops or go into on set with a purpose.
Yeah.
I go in with a purpose, I go in with an understanding, and I go in with a choice. I think a lot of people, for me, I realized that you have to go in with a choice. You can't be kind of in two minds, because you're not going to approach it authentically. I know I keep using that word, but it's all about the authenticity of it all. You have to be authentic with it, and you have to have a choice. You have to have a clear understanding, and you have to have a decision. You have to know where you're going with the script. And I think I never fully understood that before joining standby method acting. I'd never really thought about it as much. So, this is as good as, your university education in this, because it gives you all the raw tools to become an actor. And once you understand the raw basics, now obviously you have to keep working at it and working at it and working at it and become a better actor. But once you have those raw skills, you can go into any audition and be fully prepared. Once you do your research, once you follow the actor's journal, anything is possible with it. And I'm better prepared as a result.
I love that. That's incredible. And do you ever, I don't know if you're a reflective person, but do you ever look back and think, well, before I started all these modules and now I'm a completely different person or a completely different actor? I don't know. What's your perspective on all of that?
Yeah, I am, because I used to go in before, not really understanding what I was there for, if that makes sense. You go and read the script and you try to play it, but I would only focus on myself.
Right.
I would go in completely blind. You need to understand the story fully. You need to understand every other character, because I think you have to realize that, oh, you have a relationship with them. You know, they're as important as you were. They bring you to wherever you need to go in the story. So as a result, you need to fully pay attention to these things. You need to fully research. You need to fully ask yourself, okay, what's my relation to them? Why am I here? Why are they there? What's their goals? What's my goals? How do we achieve them? And how do we get to the end? All of that, for me anyway, is stuff I never thought about until I did this module. And they're essential. They're absolutely essential to acting. They're absolutely essential to every job you do. And if you want to, as they say, put bums in a seat, and if you want to be the main character in the cinema, you need to understand all this stuff. And don't worry that you don't understand it after a couple of years. It's going to take you the rest of your career. And that's okay, because you're improving day in, day out. You're putting in the effort. You have all your tools there. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
So
we're
that is,
always learning, aren't we?
yeah, that is, I'm now, I have a lot more understanding, and I am, I was just so underprepared before, and I didn't know what choices to make. And as a result, there's no point me going into audition, because I wasn't going to give them a strong performance that was it showed my individuality, my uniqueness. That was missing. I was just playing it like someone I see on the television, copying, essentially.
Yeah.
You know.
Loads of actors do that, and I don't think they mean to when they don't realise it, but it's just because nobody's taught them the skills. So people on this podcast, sometimes we get people who've listened for a few episodes and they're like, right, this is it, I need to go and at least try some of these classes at Standby. And then we get some people who've been listening for like 3-4 years, and they're just listening to the podcast, and for whatever reason there's a little bit of hesitation to try. So for someone who's been listening to the podcast for a while, who is tempted by this particular module and the training here, but they're sitting on the fence, hand on heart, what would you say to them?
Jump at the opportunity. Jump at the opportunity, because this made me a lot better actor, but it also made me appreciate the art a lot more. How much work goes into it, and how difficult it can be, but how rewarding it can be when you go through the full course. You just learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about the technique, the characters that you play. And it just shows that you can, once you put your mind to it, and once you work hard and analyze every bit of the script, every bit of the story, you can build something beautiful. So if you really want to become an actor, and you really want to be, if you really want to be able to tell a story in a beautiful, fantastic way that you can take those that go to the cinema or watch you on YouTube or wherever it'll be, if you want to take them out of their lives for 2 or 3 hours and make them forget about it, and be able to fully concentrate on the story and go, wow, that was amazing, to get into standby method acting. Absolutely. Because there's no point waiting around. If you're going to hum and haw, you're only going to waste time. You're only going to be older. So get in now. Don't be afraid. What I'm trying to say is, don't be afraid to make that decision. Go and enjoy it. It's an enjoyable experience, and it gives you the necessary skills to potentially become very good in this industry and make a decent living.
I love what you've said there about, like, if you're umming and ahhing, you're just going to get older anyway. It's so true, isn't it?
And I've done it so many times, I don't want anyone else doing it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. And it's just, I feel like you have to grab things now, don't you?
Yeah. I grab any opportunity I can. I mean, I started my acting journey, and it's had its pitfalls, it's had its stops, but I started at 20, 23, 24, let's say, realistically, in London. I'm 32 now. There's 8 years now. There was a pandemic there as well, but I've come so far. I may not be your A-lister yet. I plan to be at some stage, but I am definitely on, I've made so much progress and on a better road than I was this time 8 years ago. So it takes time, but it's a very enjoyable experience, and you just have these fascinating and wonderful experiences on the way. Get in there now, so you're not regretting it in 10 years' time.
Exactly, because like you said,
and you're never old enough.
Exactly. Yeah. Time's just going to pass anyway, isn't it? So it has been so exciting talking to you. I've absolutely loved it, and loved getting inside your brain of what your experiences have been. Where can people follow you then if they're like, oh, I really want to see what Paraic's getting up to in his career? Where's the best place for them to follow you?
Well, I think the best place would be Instagram. It's Paraic Thomas 94. So that's Paraic Thomas 94.
Yeah.
And you'll find me on there. But if you just put my name into Google as well, you'll see my IMDb, all the other accounts that I'm part of, show reels and stuff like that. Yeah, give me a follow. I love connecting with everyone. I love connecting with other actors, directors. Yeah, let's just create something and have fun.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I want to wrap up on one last thing, and we will link your Instagram in the description anyway, so people can just click on that and go straight
Yeah.
to it. Um, Out of because I can't remember exactly how many modules you did, but you made good friends with a lot of the actors there, didn't you? And you created your own production, your
Yes.
own film. Can you tell us briefly about that?
We did. So it was with Chantel, Serena, and Elizabeth, and we discussed this for a while with a director. It was Fox in the Hen House, and it was a phenomenal experience because we went through every facet of the production. I mean, we went through the script together with Jacob, who was the director. We also went through the editing stage afterwards, and then putting it to festivals. But when I was on set with everyone. I was lucky enough to be asked to be a part of it, and I became good friends with Serena, Chantel, and Elizabeth, who are doing great in their respective careers now at the moment as well. But it was just fun. It was a fantastic, I suppose, circle to come around of when we first met. I'd never met them before in person, so we'd seen each other on screen in your classes. But when I met them in person and we created this great project, it was a phenomenal experience. But the story was basically around a love triangle. This character, Marcus, was basically a player, not a very nice guy, very charming guy,
Yeah.
but he had conned these three women into thinking they were all in love with him, that he was the only man for all three of them. They thought, oh, this is going to be my husband. But he left a fatal clue. He would give them the same piece of jewelry every time. And he didn't realize that all three of these women were close friends, or they were acquaintances, or
Oh.
they had crossed each other's paths. So that was a brilliant story to bring forward. So talks of a sequel. I don't know where we'll go with that, but it did very well in various film festivals. Serena was excellent at that, and so was Chantel. They were really the driving power behind getting those festivals along with the director. But they are phenomenal actresses as well. I think they went across several fields in voiceover, in adverts, in promotions, all that sort of stuff. But it was just a lovely moment to go from working on them on screen, never met them before, to becoming really good friends and creating this really good project. It is on YouTube. It's called Fox in the Hen House. It's a great storyline there. If you want to give it a look, have a look. Give me feedback on it as well. But it just shows that no matter who you might meet in these classes, they might become your colleagues on set someday. And whatever small idea you have, you know, just create it. This was created on a shoestring budget, uh, little to no money. We fundraised bits of it. We put our own money into it. And it was really decent project, really decent project. It shows that you don't have to have millions and millions to make a compelling story and a
Absolutely.
compelling film. Yeah.
And I just want to make it clear because some people might not understand. So the classes were took online and you were training with Serena and Elizabeth and Chantel online, weren't you? And that's how you became
Yes, because
friends
of the
with them.
pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's how this came about. And I think that's one of the amazing things about classes is the opportunities that come out of the classes as well from the people that you're meeting. And I am so
Yeah.
proud of you all for that. And I love that it did well at film festivals and it shows how proactive you all are. And
Yeah.
I guess if you'd have not joined these modules, you would have never met these guys either, would you? And you wouldn't have done this film.
Exactly. Exactly. And it was great as well. Like I got to know, even though I knew Ben before this, Ben was another actor. I got to know him even more during this. And we got to do a play in early 2024 as well. Who I think Ben saw my acting through this and went, "Oh, you might be a good, for this type of character." So it gave me two opportunities there to work with Ben and to work with Serena, Elizabeth, and Chantel. So I would say to those who are humming and hawing again to get into the classes because you never know, you might be making a worthwhile project with your fellow classmates.
Absolutely. And yeah, like, can you tell us briefly about the play that you did with Ben then, and then we'll wrap up?
Yep. So it was based on the 1979 riots in Southall, which was a predominantly Indian community.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of racism, a lot of racial tensions in the area then. Um, I think I've been in Southall today, and it's a completely different place. It's a lovely place to go. We were in the Questers Theatre in Ealing, is where we performed it, and we trained in Southall itself, in the community centre there. So I played two roles in that, which was a phenomenal experience. Very challenging, but again, the Actors Journal came in handy, where I completely
Yay.
immersed myself. Oh yes, as I said, it's a great tool, but I completely immersed myself into each character. And what I would do, I would come in every day, maybe an hour before everyone else, and I would immerse myself into the character. And before I move on, I also use the relaxation techniques that you taught us as well to
Oh, I
step out
love that.
from the character. I had to, because you would be nearly emotionally drained.
Yeah.
Because the from my training over the last years, it just allowed me to immerse myself so much into the character, and particularly the Chief Constable. Chief Constable Richards was his name. This was a man who was in charge of trying to police the community, but was also predominantly, this was again in the 70s. He was a very proud British man,
Yeah.
and I think he wasn't taking the community seriously. I said he would. He betrayed the characters, but this was a man that was so driven by his career that he had no personal life. So he would
Right.
make the conclusions I came to was the only place he had power was at work. So this man would make it hard for everyone, no matter who he was dealing with in the community, because it was the only place he felt himself. He felt strong. He felt he had power, because he had sacrificed a personal life to claim that power. No, he wasn't married. He didn't have a good relationship with his family. Again, this is something the Actors Journal and my training allowed me to create, because you have to have a backstory.
Yeah.
You have to have that story going into the scene. You have to have something that drives you to say that first word.
Yeah.
So that was phenomenal. And then I played a National Front member, which was a completely different role,
Oh, wow.
completely different age gap. And just the changes on stage, my hair would be done different. I was in the Chief Constables, and I had a moustache. Whereas when I was National Front member, I was wearing a leather jacket, jeans, boots. But it wasn't it wasn't impossible to do those two roles, and I hadn't been on stage in years before that. So I was so nervous, but when I got on the stage, I felt right at home, and it was all thanks to the training. It was all thanks to the hard effort, the hard work put in, and it was thanks to the cast members. There's brilliant direction, brilliant actors surrounding me, and it was a phenomenal story. It was called Go Back Home. And as I said, based on the Southall riots in 1979. So if you want to know a lot more about that, please look into it. And I think there's a description of the play on there as well. So that was in
I do.
2024. It was.
I believe one of our other acting students, Peter, who'd been in classes with you, then came along to support you, didn't he?
He did. Peter, yes, Peter came along and to support me, and he was a key figure as well in the war module. We did our final scenes together, and we had went the full 10 weeks through. Peter's a phenomenal actor as well.
Yeah.
His attention to detail is excellent.
Yes.
And he is not afraid to make decisions. He is not afraid to immerse himself completely into the character. And he was quite. I remember when I first met him, he was quite. I wouldn't say intimidating, but I was like, "Oh, this guy's good." I was like, "Right, I need to see what he's doing right." And he's a brilliant actor. He's a brilliant mind, and he's also a very nice guy. So if you ever meet him, pick his brain. Absolutely. Yeah. And it just shows as well the community you create in this, because Peter didn't have to come along. We made friends, and he came along and supported his fellow actors, and I'd do the same for him. If he was ever doing a play or ever doing, I'd also come along and watch him as well. And that's the great thing about this community also.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Like, it just sounds like so many exciting things have happened for you. So I'm going to end on one final question. As our podcast is called Unstoppable Actors, what makes you, Paraic, feel unstoppable?
I have the drive. I have the passion. I have, what's the word I'm looking for? I have this unsatisfiable quest for more and more and more, in terms of acting, in terms of story, in terms of creativity, and finding the most challenging roles I can possible. So what makes me an unstoppable actor is I believe in myself, and I want to make some seriously good TV or film in a day. It's my drive. I'll never stop trying to, become a successful actor, because I love it. I love the industry, and I love the what's the word I'm looking for? How you can become this totally different person to yourself and have these brilliant experiences that I don't think you could have in any other industry. So that's what makes me an unstoppable actor, I think.
I love that. And I love that you believe in yourself so much. It's been so good to talk to you. And I really hope our listeners are feeling really inspired and pumped up by this. And thank you so much for giving up your time to share your experience with everyone.
Thank you so much. It was a brilliant opportunity. And if you ever want me on again, definitely.
Absolutely.
I've absolutely loved hanging out with you, and I really hope you found this episode inspiring. If you have, please do rate the podcast and hit follow so you never miss an episode, and I can help more actors like you. And come and join one of the most supportive, uplifting acting communities on socials, the Unstoppable Actors Facebook group, where you'll get your weekly injection of inspiration, networking, and receive your free Method Actors handbook so you can become an unstoppable actor.